Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Mr. Mercado's here. Mr. Dawson. Ms. Downs. Mr. Kaderis.
Here.
Mr. Kurtz. Mr. Natale.
Here.
Mr. Strollo.
Here.
Mr. Disco.
Here.
Ms. Blake.
Here.
Mr. Hilsinger. Mr. Selma.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Can you join me in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up, are we reading all three of these together, Michael? Okay, we have the three applications for Metro Realty. Rob, can you?
1, petition for a zone text amendment on behalf of Metro Realty Management Corporation applicant. Timothy S. Hollister, agent. Applicant is requesting the addition of section 44C, Assisted Housing District pursuant to CGS section 830G. 2, petition for zone change on behalf of Metro Realty Management Corporation. Applicant Timothy S. Hollister, agent. Applicant is requesting to change from an I-2 zoning district to the Assisted Housing District pursuant to CGS Section 830G for the property located on Highland Ave, Assessors Map 11, Lot 46. 3, application for a site plan approval on behalf of the Metro Realty Management Corporation applicant. Timothy S. Hollister, agent. Applicant is requesting a site plan approval for CGS Section 830G for a multifamily community for the property located on Highland Ave, Assessors Map 11, Lot 46.
Thank you. Representing the applicant, could you please state your name and your address?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I am the aforementioned Timothy S. Hollister, agent, applicant representing Metro Realty tonight. It's been my privilege to represent Metro for 30 years as of this year. Tonight, the applicant is the Metro Realty Management Corporation based in Farmington. With me are, With me are my colleagues from Metro, Ben Tripp and Jeff Sager. Ryan McAvoy from SLR Consulting is our consulting engineer. You'll hear from Tricia Gibney from the Arc of Southington, with Supportive Housing Organization, and Mark Vertucci from Fuss and O'Neill is our traffic engineer. I want to thank Mr. Glidden for his usual expert help in getting us to tonight. The application that's before you consists of three parts: a zoning regulation text amendment for a new district, which we call Assisted Housing District, or AHD, rezoning from I-2 to the AHD district, and site plan approval for the development of a multifamily community, 72 rental apartments. The application consists of the September 19th, 2023 bound narrative package, and another separate memo, which we call our Affordable Housing Needs Memo, which is a compilation we provide to commissions when we are doing affordable housing applications, give you some idea of the need for affordable housing in the town, the region, the state, and even in the country. You have the civil and architectural plans and drainage report, and the copy of the October 17 wetlands approval. The application, as noted, is filed under General Statutes 830G, which generally means that if the applicant agrees to preserve a portion of the proposed units for moderate income households for 40 years, then the state law is that the application should receive approval unless there is evidence in the record of a substantial public health or safety concern or problem. I will summarize by saying we wouldn't be here tonight if we thought there was such a problem with land or this proposal. But the application is also for what we call assisted housing, which is one of the two forms of housing that is covered by 830G. What that means is there is a component of government financing in the development. Mr. Tripp will explain that. One of the advantages to the town of Cheshire of us doing this way, as opposed to so-called set-aside housing, which is privately financed, 30% of the units are affordable. With assisted housing, the town will get 100% credit for all of the proposed units on the state's 10% list, 10% list kept by the Department of Housing. So you'll get credit on that list for both the income and rent restricted units and the market rate units in total. So complete one-for-one credit. I know you've had this discussion with your council, but I'll just say that the state law contains a provision, 830G contains a provision that 830G applications cannot be filed in industrial zones. This is an industrial zone. However, the exemption does not apply if the application is assisted housing, meaning government financial support. So this application is allowed to proceed under 830G. Procedural compliance, we verified that the notices were published, the proposed regulation amendment and rezoning were recorded as required in the town clerk's office, and the Central Regional Water Company was notified. Process to date, WPCA application for a sewer extension was approved in July. The Regional Water Authority has provided a will serve letter on August 1st, and then a supplemental letter about their services just last Friday, which I was sent to Mr. Glidden, and I assume you have a copy of that. Affidavit of mailing was provided to town staff on October 26th, and wetlands approval was received on October 17th. The basic themes of the application tonight are, first and foremost, we believe this is an appropriate location for a multifamily residential community. Centrally located on Highland Avenue, State Route 10 near East Johnson Avenue. It has water and sewer available. The neighboring uses are generally commercial or light industrial, and we believe that multifamily residential will be a quieter, less traffic producing use than other I2 zone uses that could be located on this property. The proposed regulation amendment is in the September 19th narrative package at tab 4. I'm not going to go through it piece by piece, as you would expect. It has all of the topics that are found in, and the application or the regulation was modeled on existing Cheshire regulations, but it covers eligible locations, intending to focus, at least for now, on this specific site that we're talking about: permitted uses, dimensional standards, density, parking, utilities, landscaping, lighting, signage, stormwater, erosion control, excavation and filling, the affordable housing rules, and the procedures allowing this to proceed with a site plan. So with that introduction, the speakers tonight are going to be Jeff Sager and Ben Tripp from Metro Realty, Ryan McAvoy and Mark Vertucci. So I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Sager at this point. Thank you.
Ben, who's going to operate the computer? Okay. Good evening. My name is Jeff Sager. By way of background, I wanted to give you a little information. Excuse my back, please. About who we are, what are our guiding principles, and what's our experience. So we are a Farmington-based construction and development company. We've been in business for 34 years. We're ground-up developers. We self-perform construction management, maintenance, and leasing of our properties. After development, we hold the properties for the very long term. Our two main areas of concentration are multifamily housing and medical office buildings. And as a company, we're proud that we've provided Connecticut residents with access to modern, safe, clean, affordable housing in high opportunity towns, and in our medical buildings, access to one of the largest concentrations of healthcare specialists in the state, close to persons' homes, and in the case of Connecticut Children's and UConn Health, regardless of a patient's ability to pay. Next slide, please. So we're probably best known as medical office developers, and that's because of our campus in Farmington. It's at exit 39 in the shadow of the UConn Health Center. Next slide, please. So our most recent building is the future home of the health center's Brain and Spine Institute. Next, please. 10 Birdseye Road is Hartford Health's Tallwood Men's Health Building. 11 South Road, next slide, please. 21 South Road is home to Yukon Dermatology. 55 South is an outpatient surgery center run by Surgery Centers of America. 399 Farmington Avenue is home to Connecticut Children's Orthopedics, Hartford Hospital, Jefferson Radiology's Women's Center. Next, please. 499 Farmington Avenue is Orthopedic Associates of Hartford. 505 Farmington Avenue is Connecticut Children's Outpatient Surgery Center. And 599 Farmington Avenue is Connecticut Children's and Pro Health. And the final medical. Then at 476 Cromwell Avenue in Rocky Hill, that is home to Trinity Health's Access Center with primary care, some specialist care, and radiology. We're also known for market rate multifamily housing. So in Farmington, in proximity to Raytheon's campus, we have 299 Colt Highway. That's 120 homes. In West Hartford at 243 Steel Road, in the general area of the Hartford Golf Club, that is home to 208 apartment units. And then at Bishop's Corner in West Hartford, Bishop's Place, 2432 Albany Avenue, is 65 apartments. But our largest body of work is in the area of affordable multifamily housing. And I have 17 slides that are going to follow. And I hope they demonstrate several things. First is our longstanding commitment to building multifamily affordable communities that fit within the communities where we build. And we've been guided over the years by Malona McBroom, now SLR, who's done our land planning and engineering 20 years, and they continue to design these communities for us. So we own these communities. We're the responsible party for the long term, and these communities continue to serve the towns where they are located for the long term. And you can verify that with the town planners or the town managers of any of those towns. But what I'm most proud of is that over the years, we've built trust in those towns, where in every one of those towns where we've built affordable housing, we've been invited and welcomed back to the town to build additional affordable developments. And in Avon, we have 3 affordable communities, in Berlin 5, South Windsor 6, and in Farmington 6. So I'll show you some illustrations quickly. Berry Patch in South Windsor. We can go through these very quickly, please. Boulder Ridge in Canton. Fieldstone Crossing at River's Edge in Berlin. The Flats at Little Brook, our newest community in Berlin. Heritage Glen in Farmington. Hillcrest in South Windsor. Old Farms Crossing in Avon. Orchard Ridge in Berlin. Peachtree Village in Avon. The Residences at Oakland Road in South Windsor. 80 South Road, which is under construction near the Yukon Health Center in Farmington. Stonebridge in Berlin. The Village at Hunter's Ridge in Farmington. The Village at Yorkshire in Farmington. Watson Farm in South Windsor. Westwoods 2 in Farmington. Whispering Pines in Avon. I want to spend a little bit of time on an admittedly dry topic, which is the program that we would use to finance this development in the event that it is permitted. So it's the low-income housing tax credit, and it's a dollar-for-dollar tax credit used to reduce federal income tax in the United States for affordable housing investments. It's enjoyed bipartisan support. It was signed into law in 1986. President Reagan and HUD Secretary Jack Kemp devised the LIHTC program to benefit hardworking families at the lower end of the household income spectrum. The tax credits give incentives for the utilization of private equity in the development of affordable housing aimed at low-income Americans. And the tax credit today accounts for approximately 90% of all the newly created affordable housing in the United States. The program limits the maximum rent that can be charged, and that's based on area median income. In this instance, it would be New Haven County. So in 2018, the Government Accounting Office said that the LIHTC program produces 50,000 low-income rental units annually and supports approximately 95,000 jobs, the majority of which are small business sector jobs. So the LIHTC provides funding for the development costs of low-income housing. It allows an investor, so that's usually a partner in a partnership that owns the housing, to take a federal credit equal to 9% of the development cost. And it takes that 9% for 10 years consecutively. So in the aggregate, they get tax credits for 90% of the cost of the rental housing. And the investor pays development capital for that. So it's syndicated or sold the credit to the investor, and the investor is usually a bank. So most recently for us, it was M&T Bank. So for a developer to take advantage of the LIHTC, the developer needs to win a competitive allocation of the tax credits at CHFA. They need to complete the development, certify the cost, rent it up to low-income tenants. And then the investor is found who makes capital contributions to the partnership that owns the development, and the investor in exchange is allocated those tax credits over the 10-year period. If there's any failure to comply with the applicable rules in Section 42 of the Internal Revenue Code, or if there's a sale of the project or any interest in the project for at least 15 years, it can lead to a recapture of the credits, as well as the inability to take the future credits. The program structure as part of the tax code ensures that private investors bear the financial burden if this property was not successful. Next slide, please. And this pay-for-performance accountability has driven private sector discipline in the LIHTC program, resulting in a foreclosure rate of less than 0.1%, which is far less than that of comparable market rate properties. And as a permanent part of the tax code, the LIHTC necessitates public-private partnerships. It's leveraged more than $75 billion in private equity investment for the creation of affordable rental housing. In Connecticut, this program is administered at the state level by the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. CHFA receives from Treasury a fixed number of credits based on its population. So right now, it's approximately $10 million annually. If we compete for that $10 million and we get, let's say, a $2 million allocation, it's $2 million in that year and $2 million in the 9 ensuing years. So it's 10 years of an allocation. The State Housing Agency has wide discretion in determining which projects are awarded credits, and the applications are considered under what the state calls and CHFA calls their qualified allocation plan. The credits are usually awarded once annually to development proposals submitted in January. The top-ranked proposals receive credits, then the second, and so on. Credits are exhausted for that round. In any given round, they finance probably 4 developments. And the demand for those credits versus the supply is about 3 or 4 to 1. So there's 3 or 4. So that was dry. This graphic, I think, may help a little bit. So over on the left, you see the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. The only involvement of HUD here is a demographic one, where they set the income levels and the rent levels on a national basis. Over on the right side of the screen, you have the Internal Revenue Service. So as part of the United States budget in Treasury, a certain number of tax credits are allocated to Section 42 of the Internal Revenue Code for the development of affordable housing. Then the state of Connecticut gets its share. So the State Housing Finance Authority has allocated those credits by Treasury. A developer, in the box in the middle, applies to CHFA for those credits. If it is successful, CHFA awards the credits to the developer. The developer then would sell the credits to an investor, bottom right. It would provide guarantees of completion of the development and everything that's represented therewith. The investor, in turn, gives cash in the form of a capital contribution to a partnership that the developer then uses, along with mortgage financing, to build the affordable housing development. The investor with the tax credits then lowers its tax burden by claiming tax credits in its tax return to the federal government. Maybe that graphic helps a little bit. As I said, that's dry, but it's an important fact, and I wanted you to know it. More fundamental considerations are that this provides housing for hardworking women and men at the lower end of the income spectrum. We find our communities are going to include a single parent who loses their partner, perhaps to death or divorce, but wants to keep a child in the town school system. An individual who is or becomes disabled, or perhaps due to a chronic medical condition, can't work full-time. Perhaps grew up in town, wants to be close to family. You may have residents who are senior citizens, living on fixed or limited incomes, and they can no longer afford to take care of a home, or they can't handle the stairs. You may have a resident who wants to bring an aging parent to town to provide care. One more slide, please. Want to spend 60 seconds on compliance, because people can represent all sorts of things, but a very fair question would be, well, how do we know that's true for the long term? So we're audited 3 times each year by an outside private accounting firm, the State of Connecticut Department of Housing, and the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. And they audit us for compliance with the rent we charge, the income of the persons occupying the homes, and the physical condition of the home. And we internally at Metro have a compliance department that certifies every element of each individual residing in that residence. Keep in mind, we're dealing with the IRS here, so everything needs to be buttoned down. In addition, we provide to the town an annual report certifying that compliance. And we relieve the town of the administrative burden of monitoring the ongoing compliance of affordable housing. Now, at first blush, that may not seem like a big deal, but in Farmington, where I live, we have almost 2,000 affordable housing units. And in the units that we've developed in town, we give a report to the town that's certified and audited, and that's all they need. For the other 1,000 units that aren't part of that, the administration is a nightmare. So compliance is important, that we do what we say we're going to do over the long term, but physically, it's also important for the town because it removes that administrative burden. Thank you very much for listening, and I would like to turn it over to Ben Tripp.
I'd like to ask one question first. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
please.
So I'm a little confused. So according to the statute, we would have to allow assisted living because of 830G, correct?
I'll defer to counsel on that.
Assisted housing.
housing.
So what I'd like, and I'd like our town attorney also to weigh in on this, but I'd like to hear what's the statutory definition of assisted living, since this is coming under assisted living versus affordable housing, because everything that you just described sounded more like affordable housing than assisted living.
It's assisted housing, not assisted living. And assisted housing is essentially a very broadly defined term, receives federal or state funds.
So for me personally, when I think of assisted living, I think of Elam Park where there's services there. So this is different than,
This is assisted housing, not assisted living.
The difference.
Assisted living is a community in which there's services that are typically provided to the residents. Assisted housing, the assisted part pertains to financial rather than services.
Jeff, these are just apartments that get federal funding. That's the only, that's what they are, like any other apartment. with
versus
federal
versus
funding.
something that's
There's no
affordable.
services involved.
It's not assisted living.
Yeah, maybe I could just weigh in with one other distinction that'll help you understand. 830G was passed 33 years ago, and from the beginning, there have been two categories that are covered by 830G. The first is called set-aside housing, privately financed, no government money, and the applicant's commitment is, I will set aside, I will preserve 30%. So if it's a 100-unit development, 30 units for low and moderate income housing, and then it was further refined, half of that 30% for households earning 60% or less of median, and half 15% for 80% of median. That's a two. So that is so-called set-aside housing. As Attorney D'Onofrio was just saying, the second category is assisted housing, which means there is some government financial support, whether it's a low-income housing tax credit, a loan or a subsidy program from the Connecticut Department of Housing or CHFA, some form of government financing supporting the program. In that case, the applicant follows whatever the rules for affordability that are attached to the financing as opposed to the set-aside rules. So, and assisted housing, there's a wide variety of programs and a wide variety of affordability levels and affordability periods, but set aside and assisted housing. Those are the two categories.
We have a few more questions. I'm going to go to Mr. Bowman first, then over to Mr. Strollo, then we'll come back to Mr. Carderas.
What percentage of this project is going to be assisted and what percentage is going to be affordable?
I'm going to let Mr. Tripp give you the exact numbers, but it is
Could you
100.
pick that microphone up? So
I'm going to let Mr. Tripp give you the exact breakdown, but the entire development is classified as assisted housing. And within that, there are rules that come with the low-income housing tax credit program as to what units are affordable and at what income levels. And Mr. Tripp has a slide that will show you that, Mr. Bowman. Okay, so we're going to get there very, very shortly in the next segment of our presentation.
well, if you're going to get there, I'd like the answer.
Okay,
Sure, I'll give you a very quick answer. So 100% is assisted. So assistance, by definition, is the financing that's provided by the state or the federal government. So 100% is assisted. 80% is affordable because 20% will be market rate.
So 20% of this entire project will be market rate. The other will be either assisted or affordable.
It will be both assisted and affordable.
Together or separate? And
Yeah, no. Believe me, sir, I understand completely. It's a very complicated program. Section 42 of the Internal Revenue Code enjoys the distinction of being the longest section of the Internal Revenue Code. So believe me. So in any event, to answer your question, so 100% of it is assisted. Even the market rate homes qualify for credit for the town of Cheshire because it's all assisted. So 100% of our homes get credit towards the 10% that the state aspires Cheshire to get to. Okay, so they all qualify because they're all assisted. But as a policy matter, neither the state nor the federal government want developments to be 100% affordable. So they mandate 20% affordability. And that is what we are proposing this evening. So 80% affordable. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
that's all right.
80% affordable, 20% market rate, all assisted and all qualifying.
80% affordable.
Correct,
So there'll only be 20% market rate.
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Stroll?
You said this was a result of a competitive process. Has that been done already? Have you received the credit, or is that still proposed?
That's still proposed. We'd need our land use approvals first.
So you're saying there's only about a 30% chance of this being approved statistically?
Raw statistics, yes. Raw statistics, but I will offer you the following. We have always, we've done 20 of these and we've never missed. And in last year in the statewide competition, we were number one. So we have a lot of experience and that gives us credibility with the funding sources and that helps.
So you've done 20 other exactly same projects throughout the state.
I don't want to call them exactly the same,
Well,
but
are we the first of this category?
No.
where- No.
No.
Okay. And what other towns have this type?
Avon and Farmington.
Avon has an 80% with 20.
Oh, excuse
Assisted.
me. Every one of those that I showed you this evening
Yep.
is 80-20 in all of those.
And every one
I
of those
showed you.
has
So
assisted.
Farmington 6, South Windsor 6, Avon 5, Berlin 5, whatever the numbers were I put up. They're all the same. And I didn't want to say exactly the same because, architecturally, maybe they're a little different. The clustering of the buildings is a little bit different. But in terms of the 80-20 affordability, everything I showed this evening in the affordable housing, the 17 slides, those are all 80% affordable and 20% market rate. I guess with one exception, Heritage Glen in Farmington, dating back to 1997, is 50-50.
Why wouldn't you put a project like this in like Waterbury that really would need this versus us? What,
Proposing it here.
I know, but what is keeping this from like the cities that need it more and you're going more in the residential? I don't understand that.
Well, that's kind of a policy question. So
Because I think that like a lot of the towns that are getting hit by this 830G, I mean, are against because they're communities where you have residential housing. Now you're bringing in this large project where most people there's not renters. I mean, like most people are home buyers. in
yeah,
small
so
towns.
we've done 20 of these. I've been in litigation only once. And as I think I illustrated in those slides, that in each of these towns, once we've built a community, we've been invited back to do another and another. If
No,
you look-
I don't. Like I said, I don't oppose having it. I think that these types of projects, but I just the whole system of 830G to me attacks the smaller communities and the cities that really need the income from housing and taxes are not even in the game. That's like you said, that's discouraging to me because, looking at the state as a whole, I mean, somewhere like Waterbury where like they got slums and they don't even they need this kind of structure coming in, people investing in their properties. And, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, so if I created the impression that the urban areas do not receive allocations of funding, I would like to retract that. They receive,
Because like I said,
As
every
much or
town
more.
that you've shown is more or less a bedroom community that you're bringing in this because they're trying to fulfill the 10% of affordable housing.
well, we have focused on the suburban communities, that's true. But there are other developers that focus on the urban communities, both for-profit and nonprofit developers. There's as much, if you look at the applications that go into the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority in any given year, there are as many from the urban areas as there are from the suburban areas. Perhaps more actually.
I just know there's a lot of communities that are under fire for 830G. And I think that it's, like I said, it's something that the state's pushing, but I really don't agree with it,
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that brings up a couple extra questions I was going to have. Is you mentioned that there's a need. What is this need in Cheshire? I don't care what the state policy is saying that they think we have a need. I'd like to know where the need came from our economic
Sure,
developer.
I could defer to Ben Tripp on that.
Okay.
So for the record, Ben Tripp on behalf of the applicant. So I have a slide later on that addresses need. If you, I can go through my portion of the presentation, or I can jump straight to answering your question.
Yeah, you could do your
Okay.
presentation then.
You know what our concern.
No, absolutely. And I respect and appreciate them. I also appreciate your, do we have another question?
Yeah, no, I have a couple. So you mentioned that we're a high opportunity town. Does that mean that you think we have a lot of businesses that need people to come here to work, or we have a lot of people that are looking for this type of housing? Where does that statement come from?
So high opportunity is, it's a policy distinction where it's a town that has, low crime rate, high access to employment. It's the type of town where this sort of community is desirable, because it provides a lower, and I think this would also be addressed by one of my later slides about why this product is of a particular need in communities like Cheshire. So the opportunity really means the opportunity provided to the individual who's fortunate to be able to live in one of these lower income rent restricted apartments that they may not, the opportunity they may not have if that apartment were located in a lower income urban community.
And then back to the comments Matt had asked on the 80-20, you said the 20% or the market rate, the 20% market rate is assisted, but it sounded like you meant the only assistance they get in market rate is that it comes off of our credit.
Yeah, assisted
Do
again.
any of those people living there actually get assistance?
No, so no one living in these communities receives financial assistance. The financial assistance is granted to the development for the purposes of constructing the development. And so that's the distinction. They're all considered assisted apartments because the project is financed by a low income housing tax credit, or so these aren't not individuals necessarily receiving Section 8 funding, or these are individuals who just purely by qualifying at a lower income level are granted a restricted rent. So they pay the rent based on what their income is, and there's no additional funding coming for those individuals.
But that's the 80%. But the 20% gets, they don't.
There's no
They're
rent.
paying.
They're paying whatever the
cash,
market rate
anything
is.
special,
Correct.
whatever the market. So there is no assistance at all. You get the assistance as the developer.
Yeah. So the reason they're, I guess, considered assisted is because it's that additional rent that again helps support the mortgage, that helps really subsidize kind of naturally internally the rest of the apartments that we have to artificially keep the rent lower.
And then in your letter, or letter from DDS, it mentions services and supports provided by the Arc of Southington. What is that?
So that I think is perhaps causing some of this confusion around assisted versus affordable. So that's what we call supportive housing. So in this development, 20% of the apartments will be reserved for individuals with intellectual disabilities. Supports, so both financial and service related, will be provided by the Arc of Southington. We've got the chief executive of the Arc of Southington here tonight who will explain.
Now,
a
is
little
that
bit more about it.
additional to the 80-20?
No, it's
or
included
is
within the 80.
So 20% of the 80 is supported.
Correct. I know a lot of
It was just wasn't
terminology.
brought to us earlier, so something I read. And that support is what? What's
So
that support?
we'll have an office on site where we'll have a staff member from the Arc of Southington who will be staffing wake staff overnight. So if there's any kind of service related elements that comes up, there's a physical presence, and the Department of Developmental Services pays for that for those services. But those individuals will also receive rent certificates to help them pay their rent from the Department of Developmental Services.
And what are the services that are rendered? What the type of individuals that are in there, what services do they need?
So it's mostly there's a lot of assisted technology that helps these individuals transition from what may be a living at homes environment or a living in a group home environment. And so the initial funding kind of will help us be able to deliver that higher level of apartment that includes a lot of these new cutting edge assistive technologies. But they will also, every individual is different and has a different level of need. But these individuals are ones that will be selected to be successful, who can live and thrive independently with minimal external support.
And we'll hear about those needs from the ARC when they
Yeah,
speak.
we have the CEO of the ARC of Southington. We also have Elba Caraballo, who's the Director of Housing from the Department of Developmental Services. Here, I don't think Elba was planning on speaking, but if you do have further questions on the program, we're happy to go further with that.
How many assisted living, not housing, do we have in Cheshire right now?
Do you mean supportive?
Yeah, supportive, assisted living as opposed to supportive.
I believe, and I think Tricia Gibney of the ARC of Southington could probably answer that when she speaks. I'm not sure.
And is that part of a need that we need in Cheshire that's
all
grouped into this?
So I think we'll hear more about that as we go on.
Okay, thank you.
Summarize, because this has been very helpful. So you're talking about 72 apartments. I'm going to say 70 because the math is easier.
Yep.
So out of 70 apartments, 20% is 14. So 14 of those 70 apartments will be for individuals with disabilities.
Correct.
And those 14 apartments will probably be within the 80 of the lower priced apartments, correct?
They will be, yes.
And so 56 apartments out of 70 will be reserved for persons who are either at 80% or 60% of the median income, who can then spend up to 30% of their income on the apartments.
That's correct, with the caveat that it's actually only 60%, because 20 are the supportive housing population. Then we've got 60% that will be some level of affordable, and then there's 20% at market rate with no income or rent restriction.
So actually, since 830G allows affordability, the designation of affordability based on 30%, you're really having a much larger percentage of the apartments are affordable than
Correct.
in the typical or in the minimal 830
Correct.
formula.
Yes, and that's a function of the financing vehicle that we anticipate using, which is the low-income housing tax credit, which incentivizes higher levels of affordability.
Thank you.
We keep playing with numbers. 72 units.
Yep.
20% are going to be market rate.
Correct.
The balance, 57, will be either assisted or affordable.
And we can say 15 will be
I'm
assisted.
just
Yeah.
using 15.
Yeah.
If you're saying 20%, that's,
No,
what?
yes. And in the DDS commitment letter, they also prescribe 15. So we'll have 15 at market rate, 15 supportive units. So that's 30. So we're down to 42.
Okay. The one question, and it's probably not for you, but more for our tax department here. The value of your building is based on income. So people here have to understand that if you're certifying your rent out, what is the rate of New Haven County for a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom unit? So the basis of the assessment of this building is going to be on the income that you're receiving. Therefore, the town itself is actually subsidizing part of this program, because it's not getting the full market rate of the building or the apartment. Is that correct?
So with, again, one distinction is that the 20% of the apartments that are supported, they also receive rent support that bring their rents up to effectively a market. They're called MAR market, they're market rate rent certificates. So even though they'll be at the lower end of the income spectrum for affordability perspective, the income that associated with it is up at a market rate.
So the 15, and I'm going to, for a better word, going to call them ADA.
Okay.
Units are going to be then at market rate, because they're receiving some sort of assistance from some sort of state or federal program.
Yes.
Okay. So the balance then, like the 300 units that we approved in the north end several months ago are at full market value. The town of Cheshire receives the assessment on full market value, therefore the tax income of full market. This, the town of Cheshire is actually going to discount. Now, if you're saying 30 units, because that's what it is now, it's 15 and 15 is 30. So 42 of the units, or more than half this project, is going to have some sort of a tax relief from the town of Cheshire for all intents and purposes. Is that correct?
We will be taxed at the full, the full rate that, as you said, based on the income of the development. So
Yes, thank you.
So let me give you exact numbers, having done this for 30 years.
I'm sorry?
Let me give you some exact numbers, having done this for 30 years.
Okay.
So I know exactly where you're going with that question. And yes, on a per unit, so you look at your tax burden, property tax burden per unit, it would be lower than a market rate development.
Thank you.
So, and I can give you the specifics. So figure the affordable units are going to average about 60% of AMI. Okay. And then you've got the 20% market rate. So as a general proposition, the value based on income, and it's not necessarily based on income, by the way, but if it is based on, well, assessments aren't always based on income. They can sometimes be based on cost. We won't go there. If it's based on income, you're looking at probably 2/3, right? 2/3 of what a market rate development would pay. That's my experience town to town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I have one more question. How long is this program? This is a deeded type program. So there'll be, how many years is this before it goes back to full market rate?
Somewhere between 40 and 50. Have we
What the
made that
regulation says,
decision?
somewhere between 40 and 50?
50.
It's 50 years.
50 years.
50 years.
thank you. So let's talk about the site. To orient you, this site, it doesn't have a mailing address, but it is lot 46 on Highland Ave, State Route 10. It is located south of the the entrance drive would be about 750 feet south of the intersection between Highland Avenue and Johnson. It is about a mile from a few of the town's major employers, and it's about a half a mile south of the new development that's been approved at Stonebridge Crossing, just north of 691. So next slide. So if we zoom in a little closer, some of our neighbors, we are abutted to the south by Power Station. To the Power Station is an event, media, and technology services company. To the north by an undeveloped piece of land. And we are across the street from an office park in a very popular restaurant that some of you may know. Notably here, we are not, as was sort of alluded to, we're not in a residential neighborhood, which I think in some, frankly, in some levels, there's a benefit to that because oftentimes that's where we run into some of the largest local concerns is the potential for impact to local residential communities. All right, next slide, please. So I've got Ryan McAvoy here from SLR. He'll go into much more detail about the proposed site plan, but I wanted to discuss a few high-level elements. So first, when we put pen to paper to come up with this plan, we utilize Section 44A of the Town of Cheshire's zoning regulations, which is the town's affordable housing zoning reg. All of the bulk and dimensional standards of that reg are adhered to in this plan. So maximum height of 50 feet. We have 7 buildings here. 6 of them are 2-story elevations at 37 feet. all of the setbacks, all the density requirements, so that they're all, we use that regulation as a guide to try and ensure that this development fits within at least the aesthetic and the density characteristics that the town prefers. So what we have here are 7 total buildings. 6 of them are.
Sorry, can I interrupt for 1 second? I
Yes,
see
sir.
that a couple of commissioners are kind of peeking around the corner.
I can turn this.
Can we turn that a little bit?
Is that how? So we have 7 total buildings here. As I mentioned, 6 of them are 2-story elevations with 8 units per building. They are all what we call condo style or home style apartments where there's a direct entry into the apartment. There's no common hallway. All of the apartments will have private outdoor space. The second floor apartments have a balcony off of the front, whereas the first floor apartments have private patios off of the rear of the apartment. The 7th building is a 3-story elevator building with common hallways. The incorporation of that building was specifically as a result of our collaboration with the Arc of Southington and with DDS. There was a desire for a building with a common hallway, and that's the building where their office would be. This is the type of setup that's been successful with the supportive housing in previous developments. So that's why we included it here. Notably, it is the building that's furthest from Route 10. It's about 450 feet from the road. Speaking of the distance from Route 10, the closest building is about 125 feet from the edge of curb. It's 100 feet from the property line. And in that distance, you can see there's a significant amount of mature vegetation, which I believe will go a long way to provide visual screening of the development from Route 10. If we can go to the next slide. So this is a depiction of what that buffer looks like today. And although you'll see the plans at this time show us clearing the vegetation and planting a new buffer, we're very open to the idea of retaining as much of this existing vegetation as desired by the commission if it is desired to maintain that element of screening. This is another depiction of that vegetation as you proceed north on Route 10 towards 691 to just, again, depict what it looks like today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to go through the details of the site plan.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Ryan McAvoy. I'm a licensed professional engineer with SLR. And I'm just going to run you through some of the elements of the site plan. I know you have a lot of questions about the nature of the application, so I won't try to take too much time. The property is 13.8 acres in size and roughly rectangular in shape other than a carve out, we'll call it that, for the power station business located along Route 10. North is up on this map. Route 10 is on the left side, up and down. And the property is really dominated on the eastern portion by a very large wetland corridor, some 6 acres plus in size. However, the western, I'd say 40% or so of the site has about 6 acres of upland area. There is a ridgeline that separates the way in which the site drains. This ridgeline is some 150 to 200 feet into the site, where the front part drains back towards Route 10 and the rear drains back towards the wetland areas. There is a small upland area on the far east side of the property. Nope, not done yet, sorry. Topography is relatively gentle, in particular, along our developable portion of the lot. It's extraordinarily flat by the wetland, but clearly we're not going back that far. We have a high point of roughly 214 at the south central portion of the upland areas, low point along Route 10 of 194, and then further back in the wetlands of 175. Next slide, please. So our proposed plan has a feature that was noted before about the sort of large open area along the front of the property that could either be revegetated, planted, or it could be natural in state. That's in part due to a 100-foot easement that exists from neighboring properties with the intention, I believe, at some point in the past of some sort of a common road that went north-south parallel to Route 10. So we do have to respect that easement with the placement of our buildings. So we do have a driveway split with a vegetated median roughly central along the frontage of the site, and full access to the upper 6 buildings, which will each be 8 units apiece, 2 stories tall. And then in the rear, a 24-story building, 3 stories tall, as was mentioned before. Parking is allocated as 2 spaces per unit in accordance with Section 44A, which was the guiding regulation for how we approach this. And the parking is I think, reasonably allocated on a sort of a per building basis. So parking will be in close proximity to the units in really all cases. We do have 24-foot aisle access driveway to the rear of the property. We have checked the dimensional characteristics of our driveway and parking configuration to support the Cheshire aerial apparatus from the fire department, and we have no difficulty traversing the site. Just a few more things, Mike. Want to go? So a couple items from emergency services access. We do have a 15-foot grass paver driveway on the north side of the property. This is, again, if there's an emergency and vehicles can't enter the main driveway, emergency services can enter through that grass paver driveway. Similarly, we have one along the side of the building for Unit 7, which is the larger of the 3 buildings. Next slide, please. So our site attempts to mimic, to the extent possible, the existing grading of the property. Our roadway will rise from Route 10 to the ridge line of the property. In this case, it will only be about 4 feet of grade change to our high point, and then it will very gradually descend towards the wetland to a low point of 198. This is all roadway grades. Drainage will be collected and conveyed via a conventional pipe and catch basin system, where runoff will first be captured in catch basins, then directed through a hydrodynamic separator located immediately adjacent to a large underground stormwater detention system, which consists of concrete retained structures, roughly 82 in total. And this retained structure, series of structures, will result in a decrease in the overall rate of runoff from the site. We do have soils that are suitable for infiltration, so we are able to account for some percentage of the stormwater discharging through the underlying sand and gravel soils. After exiting through this retained system, it will enter into a water quality basin, which is located upgrading to the wetlands. This water quality basin is sized in accordance with the 2004 DEP Water Quality Manual for 1 inch of runoff, where again there'll be renovation through vegetated uptake and some infiltration through the soils below, with the ultimate discharge being in a level spreader outlet to allow for water to enter into the wetlands in a low velocity manner with no erosive properties. This site does have regulated activities, which were reviewed and approved by the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission. Not shown on this map, but we do have a detailed sediment erosion control associated with this plan as well, protecting the on-site resource, which is the wetlands to the rear of the property. And that soil erosion control plan is designed in accordance with the 2002 guideline for soil erosion and sediment control. Our plan also includes photometric analysis showing that parking areas are illuminated appropriately with little to no light spillage off the property. We have a landscaping plan that shows screening along the north and south property boundaries with ornamental and shade trees located within the parking and driveway areas. And we also provided earthwork computations showing that there is a net import of 7,000 cubic yards of material for this development, much of which will be needed for roadway construction, storm drainage construction, and things of that nature. So I could provide any more detail that you may like, although I know you guys have all your questions thus far have been geared towards the nature of the units. So if you have any questions on the site, I'd be happy to answer them.
Hi, Ryan. Okay, the questions I have is, I know that this is a lower lying area than beside it. The building beside it has like a retention pond down. Look on the overview map, you can see it.
Go back one,
the next door neighbor. Yeah, right in front of you, straight up, right there. Isn't that like a little retention for water? Because he's at a higher elevation, correct?
Yeah, it does not drain. It does not have any direct overflow to our.
Okay. Is this on the aquifer,
It is within the aquifer protection area, I believe, yes.
the whole piece of property?
Yes,
Okay,
or at least a percentage of it. I don't know if it's entirely within, but I know a large portion of it is.
okay. So the drainage system is going to be underneath in front of the largest building? Is that what I'm understanding?
There's two components to it. One is where we're going to collect the runoff and have it go
Like the
into-
square blocks that are in front of the bigger building? Is that the drainage right there?
Yes, that is. That underground storm drainage right here will do the bulk of the stormwater retention. Okay, so in other words, that is a fairly large underground structure which will take water at a fairly high rate and release it at a lower rate. And as the water comes in at a higher rate, it stores within the structure. And that's
So how deep is that? It's like maybe 5 feet deep from
it's
the
a 5 foot
ground?
deep. It's a 5 foot deep.
And then
concrete
how
structure.
much farther than that?
About 3-4 feet below that, below the grade. So you have about 3 feet of asphalt, road-based material,
Okay,
and then you get to your structure. It varies a little bit, but it's generally, the bottom would be about, say, 8
it's like a
feet
big
plus or
tub
minus,
underneath it.
for lack of a better term, sure.
So what I, like this property beside, there's no, the topography from their pond isn't going to come into,
No, there's no overflow into our site.
coming towards this property now?
Right.
Okay. And then as far as the entrance and the exit, I mean, that's on the plan, you're just coming out onto Route 10. And this right away could be possibly a widening of the road down the road.
I don't know that it would be a widening of Route 10 because it is a private easement.
Yeah,
I think the thought when
but
it
the
was,
state could take it.
well, I suppose the state could take it, but I don't think that the intent was to give it to the state at any point.
And the setbacks are still fine with the buildings if that happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a private right of way. It's not a state or town right of way. So our setbacks are based on the limits of the.
Well, I mean, I'm
state.
concerned about the intersection down the street, as at this point, with traffic, if they'll widen the intersection even more.
Well, I wouldn't expect that the state would ever do a taking of the property that would result in a 100-foot loss of land. That would.
Well,
that
I'm
would
just saying
certainly-
is that, right now, that center right before you get to this property is a problem area for traffic, major. I mean, I'm on that road every single day.
I know.
And there's a lot of accidents. The sight line on this property going to out of the property going to the left is horrible because you have a hill there. So I mean that kind of really stinks as far as trying to cross traffic, and then you're coming into a 2-lane road where it merges. So to take a left out of this and go south, I would think that that'd be near impossible because the way that the road is, it's probably only a right turn out of that would be safe.
We do have Mark from Frost and O'Neill is going to be presenting the results of his traffic analysis.
I'm just saying, like, as far as that, was there ever a option of coming out like onto Fieldstone? On the
There's
backs?
no access to Fieldstone.
There's no access.
No. Sorry about that. It's a very heavy microphone.
Yeah, and then it's too far from, okay. Those are the quick questions I had. Thank you.
Hi, Ryan. I'm looking at the land versus the use of it. That pretty bold line right there is at the edge of the, I don't want to say the aquifer, but the wetlands. Is that what that is right there to the right of the whole project?
This is the wetland boundary, this gray line here.
Okay, so it looks like the project is utilizing very little of the actual property. Is that true?
It's only utilizing about, I'd say, rough estimate, 40%, maybe
Right.
even a
So
slightly less.
60% of it is woods and wetland.
Yeah, there's roughly, of the 14 acres, there's about 6 and change acres of wetlands and about 8 acres of upland.
And that is there any possibility of expansion on that property? I mean, that's more of a question for Michael, but.
In terms of expansion of the footprint into the wetland areas?
Right. Let's say this gets approved and it built, and they say, hey, this is great. Let's build 7 more right next to it.
I think, given the proximity of our development to the wetlands, we would have a pretty significant burden and hurdle to develop further into the property with the Wetlands Commission.
Okay. And then with that said, from the edge of the project to Diana Court is pretty significant. There's a lot of land in between there.
I don't have the exact distance, but it's several hundred feet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Ryan, did you say that you're going to be giving us a traffic report
That's correct.
that's coming?
Yes.
Because some of the questions I have then are sightline distances.
Yeah, that would be addressed by
One of the things I do want to question is because this is, part of this is assisted, and I believe 20%. I feel that the parking, at least 20% of this parking should be handicap or ADA type parking. If it's going to be 20% assisted, then I think it should be 20% handicap. So I'd like to see that reflected in this application. And if this is coming under 830G, why are you asking us for a zone text change?
So
For the record, Tim Hollister. When we do 830Gs, we sometimes have the option of just doing it with a site plan, if that's where your question came from. That is true. However, here's the practical consequence of just doing a site plan, or I should say not doing a regulation amendment. The question is, what do you end up with at the end of the day, at the end of the process? If you have only a site plan, and of course we're changing the rules. The underlying zone is I2, and we get a multifamily residential site plan approved on an I2 parcel. Do we have a non-conforming use? Do we have a variance? If you have a regulation change, then you know what you have. You have a zoning regulation in place that sets the rules for the parcel. It's something the town knows what the rules are. The town can enforce it. The applicant knows what the rules are. It's what we call, as you well know, a conforming use. So over time, I'm going to say 85% of the time, over 30 years that I've been doing 830G applications, we do a regulation amendment so that we end up with a conforming use and the rules are clear and the rules are enforceable. It's a better zoning and planning practice. That's really the best answer I can give
And
you.
in a zone text change, don't you have to prove to the town how this is going to benefit the town?
Well, if under 830G, I would say the commission has to prove that there's something wrong with doing it that way, but it's consistency with the plan of conservation and development, consistency with the town's own recently written affordable housing plan. Yes, I mean, those are all positives. In general, my opinion as the applicant's representative is the mix of supportive units and assisted housing units, the range of incomes is a benefit to a town like Cheshire, as it is to many of the towns that have, the gentleman referred to under attack from 830G. 830G is not an attack mechanism. It's a way to create a greater spread of incomes for people who need it and whose housing needs are not served. That's why 830G was passed 30 years ago, because we were only building large high-end subdivisions and luxury apartments and nothing at the more affordable end. So the state legislature stepped in to try to rectify that imbalance. That's so we could debate whether it's a benefit, but I think a lot of people think it is.
I'm not debating it. I'm just asking you what the benefit to the town of Cheshire is.
Yes,
I'm not here to debate you.
I
I'm
understand.
asking you for your opinion. I was actually kind of asking the town planner, but
Okay,
you jumped up and you answered it. I'm not here to debate you.
understood.
Is this an 830G application that is not allowed in our zone of I2? Or this is a zone text change that you're asking so that we allow this? And another question I would have is, once we allow this zone text change, do we open the rest of our industrial area up to this type of regulation and to this zone text change?
Well, that question's easy. The regulation change is written to be specific to this property. If you want to, as the commission, want to broaden the geographic applicability, either now or later, that's your prerogative. But we are not set this up so you have to think about what other I2 properties in town might be subject to it. So this is clamped down tight. The only property we're talking about is the one we're on Highland Avenue.
Thank you.
So I would like to actually go to our town planner and our town attorney and ask the same question. How does this benefit Cheshire?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that, as has been discussed already tonight, under 8-30G, the development of affordable housing, in this case, an assisted affordable housing project in an industrial zone, is carved out. And what's been proposed as the text amendment is the creation of an assisted housing district, at this location. And when you look at the proposed regulations for the assisted housing district, or the text amendment rather, you see that it does, in fact, as the applicant's attorney indicated, set forth some parameters and some rules for this development. I mean, the report from the town planner that's dated November 6th to the commission indicates that the application and the proposed development's consistent with the town's plan of conservation and development because it increases affordable housing opportunities, promotes a variety of housing types, and enhances housing mobility and choice across income levels. So, if you're looking for what the benefit is to the town, that's the benefit.
Flip side of that, we don't allow housing in our industrial areas. And by using this portion of 830G, it forces us to, correct?
Well, anyone that submits an 8-30G application for an assisted housing project in an industrial zone is going to be able to get around that prohibition on residential housing in the industrial zone.
I know we have a lot of people from the public here, and you get an opportunity to speak later. Can you repeat that into the microphone? I just want them to be able to hear the position that this commission has put in using 8-30G.
Right. 8-30G specifically addresses the development of residential housing in an industrial zone and specifically identifies the 8-30G application for assisted affordable housing or assisted housing as essentially a carve out to a prohibition on residential development in an industrial zone. So you have the ability under 8-30G to analyze the application based on the parameters that apply to any 8-30G application. However, you do not have the ability to deny an application because it's an application for residential use in an industrial zone when that application is an 8-30G application for assisted housing.
Council, so, but approving this would not, a few weeks ago, we changed the regulation so that there could not be residential and industrial zones, and that prevents the set aside 830G projects. By approving this, that would not affect the ability to say no to set-aside projects in industrial zones?
No, it doesn't affect that. It's the assisted housing component that's the
Right.
issue here.
But now we do have, well, I guess once we change the zone, it's no longer industrial. I guess that's the point too. Once we change the zone, if we pass this and change the zone, this parcel is no longer zoned industrial.
Well, that's right. This parcel particularly would be in what's referred to in the application and the text amendment application as an assisted housing district.
But our regulation that said no residential in industrial zones still applies to prevent set-aside
Right,
830G.
right,
Okay.
because the specific carve out that we're dealing with here is for assisted housing.
So this is not an overlay. This changes that zone completely.
Well, it's
parcel.
actually, it'd be a change that's specific to this parcel, the way they crafted the language, and specific to this particular property.
So are there laws against spot zoning that this is?
So if it was a regular run-of-the-mill zoning, zone text amendment application, yes, you could run into an issue with a spot zoning case, but 830G, that doesn't apply. Because the intent is
To break the
you're
law.
adding,
Right.
well, it's not following your normal, like I said, structure for a zoning application because the 830G gives the intent to increase a number of affordable units within a community. So
And hence the comment of attack. Now, with it being industrial zoned, is there a different tax basis for industrial to residential?
you talk, if it was developed,
Yes.
I could ask that question of the tax assessor, but just the one I'd warn you is that it's outside of
I
the
know.
pillars of
I
what,
want the answer.
830G, okay.
Yeah. Because we're getting 2/3 of what residential is. And I have a feeling that if it was left industrial, we even get a greater tax if it's developed, when it's developed.
Understand, but like I
But
said.
this all goes back to what's the benefit of it to Cheshire? So we're getting creamed on taxes, 2/3 if it was residential. We'll get creamed even more if it's developed and it's industrial. So that offsets what might be policy that helps Cheshire, because I do not see the need in Cheshire. I don't hear it from our economic developer that we need more assisted or supportive or any of this. It's all policy coming out of the state. So
In terms of the tax value or the tax assessment of the subject property, right now, yes, it's an industrial zone. So theoretically, if you were to do an appraisal of the property, the highest and best use of the property would be industrial. But it's speculative to try to determine what the taxable grand list addition would be if the property was developed for its highest and best use, because there are certain exemptions under 12-81 of the general statutes that are applicable to industrial uses. Portions of the property, for example, could be dedicated to renewable energy. You could have PV that would be exempt. So, it's a little bit far afield from an analysis under 8-30G, but that's the answer is.
Council, under any circumstances, are we allowed to consider the tax consequences of a development?
No.
So I have two questions. First one is, in this industrial zone, what is allowed to be built? Please. I'll be very clear on this because my second question's following up on that.
So you allow, obviously, we took out all the residential uses. You allow certain agriculture uses such as keeping of horses, ponies, livestock, other farm animals. You allow the commercial boarding and kennels. Pet grooming is allowed. Churches, places of worship, public service corporations, municipal buildings, not-for-profit or governmental uses, playgrounds, carnivals and fairs, bazaars, golf clubs, tennis clubs, driving ranges, clubhouses for not-for-profit fraternal organization. Oh, sorry, it's not allowed in the industrial. Commercial recreation facilities, healthcare and exercise facilities, restaurants, motor vehicle repair licenses in the I-2. You allow boat dealers, hair and beauty salons, motels, hotels, banks, professional office, medical and dental offices. You allow wireless telecommunication facilities, radio and television broadcasting, printing and publishing, manufacture, breweries, wineries, warehousing, self-storage, contractors yard, excavation, paving contractors, lumber and building material storage, freight and material trucking, machine shops, commercial storage of bulk liquid oxygen for home health care, bulk storage, cement, concrete mixing plants, storage of petroleum goods, laundry, cleaning and dyeing plants, other bona fide of processing, distributing of milk or edible dairy products, heliports, earth removal in accordance with Section 25, screenings, sifting, crushing bulk material, forms of processing sandstone and gravel, the like, reuse, transfer, recycling centers, adult entertainment, provided you conform with the locational standards, and the display and storage of landscape materials.
Okay. By approving the zone text change for this property, what does that do to the abutting properties? So power station, they want to tear it down. They want to build an asphalt plant that is going to stink up this area like you would not believe. The property to the north, they want to do the same thing. What does this property or this zone text do to those other property owners? Do they still have those rights?
They
Or
didn't
will this-
have those rights.
Or can this property owner come in and say, hey, this is residential, you can't have that next to
So
us?
the portions of those two properties are located within the aquifer protection area.
Okay.
Those uses are not allowed. So they didn't have those rights to begin with, because those are regulated activities which they can't establish a new use. But other uses that are not considered regulated activities under your aquifer protection ordinance are allowed on those properties, provided they go through the approval process, either special permit, site plan. A lot of those uses that I listed were by special permit.
So if this body were to approve a special permit for something that may not be desirable next to a residential community, that residential community doesn't matter because these property owners have their rights just like anybody else. Correct?
Well, you would just go through the normal special permit process, and you would, if they meet your criteria for granting a special permit, the commission has the
I
ability.
just
or
want to make
rights
sure, I just want to make
grant it.
sure that if we do a zone text change for this property.
I think I know
It's not
where
affecting
Jeff's
other
wrong.
property.
Like, so let's say Dalton Enterprises relocated to Lane Construction and they had the sealer smelling, which, that they could do that. I mean, what would the right, and I get what he's saying, is what would the right of the property owners, would they still have that?
The key to that is
Right.
we'd have to look at Lane's construction, the activities that are occurring out there right now. If they wanted to move the plant from Willow to there, the issue is if it's a site that does not contain a regulated activity as pursuant to your aquifer protection ordinance, you can't
That be
move-
on that side, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
you can't move that use to that location because it would be in the aquifer. You're right, you're right. Actually, wait. So your micro cultivators, we have the separation distance that's required from a residentially used structure, and we also have the smell disbursement.
That's where we're hurting Cheshire again with this property for an area that's cut out for that type of use. Carved out area.
Yeah, the
That's
only,
good, Mike.
the only thing I'd add is that obviously, as it said earlier, since it's an assisted development, all the residential units that are associated with this development, although not all of them are deed restricted, count towards affordable units under 830G. So that may be,
I get that. And then how does that reduce our average income and the marketability of Cheshire?
That's something we can consider. I mean, you're asking these questions.
I
I believe
can't
that's
because
beyond their
because
scope of
it's
what
what's
we're
right
allowed
for
to do.
Cheshire. I'll point it out in our POCD. It's in there.
Well, it's
And we
also-
can ask those questions and we have to make judgments on what is right for this town on all levels, even economic. It's right in there. I had this argument with the mayor when he texted me in this meeting.
Well, but there are things that we were allowed to consider as a commission and things that we're not. Is that?
Economic
Well,
impactions, we can.
Well, that's correct. I mean, the standard that you've heard me tell you about in the past in connection with 8-30G applications is that if you want to consider denying an application under 8-30G, and again, let's not get too confused about the assisted housing part of this. It's an affordable housing application under 8-30G. The relevance of the assisted housing component is that it allows the applicant to pursue the application in an industrial zone, because that's what the statute says. You don't have any control over what the statute says, okay? And to deny it, there has to be sufficient evidence in the record to prove that the decision is necessary to protect a substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters which you can legally consider, that such public interests outweigh the need for affordable housing, and that such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the proposed development. So that, that's the standard. So when you're saying, what does Cheshire get out of it? That's not the question. The focus needs to be on, evidence in the record, and we're still in the
As far
public
as
hearing. So
as far as evidence, I mean, we have been, I think, proactive as far as trying to get applications for affordable housing along the way here. I mean, we've had several in the last few years. And I think, what it comes down to is that an application where we've trying to protect the industrial zones because that's what we're trying to do. It comes down to a safety issue. You're mixing people in an industrial zone. I mean, that's like the highest trafficked intersection in the town. It's dangerous. I mean, I am in the towing business. I do a lot of accidents in that short little circuit. So now you're putting people in a traveled, I mean, I really believe that we should have an outside traffic study done in order to know how many vehicles go on that road, because I'm looking as a safety factor. Where this property is, to me, is not safe to come out on a 2-lane road to cross over, because everybody's going to try and go across, and that's where all the accidents will be. So, I mean, being on that road every day, seeing what crashes on that road every day, I'm more about a safety issue with this property being there. I understand everything else goes around it. And no, I don't want to mix a residential area and take away industrial zone. I don't want personally, but I'm more about the safety of pulling out on a Route 10. And I don't feel it's a safe area to be pulling out with residential people coming out. And, you're putting all these people here, right? If they want to go get milk and they want to walk to Whole Foods or down the street to the restaurant or whatever, there's no sidewalks. They're going to walk down 691 and get hit. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like you're putting a group of people. I mean, the whole development we just did with all the apartments and the condos and everything is an area where everybody could stay together and move around on the property. You're sticking this island way far away from that. And now all these people that are here that are going to want to go down there, and if they don't want to drive and they walk, now we got big problems. Somebody's definitely going to die. That's without a doubt.
So
So,
I don't disagree with you. I'd really like to defer those types of questions though until we hear the traffic study.
yeah, I know, but I'm just saying is that's my main thing.
So I just want to make sure that I heard the answer for my previous question correctly. So if something is permitted on one of these abutting properties, it would go through our special permit process. And if this commission decides to approve something that may not be desirable next to this development, sorry, to use Rob's words, too bad.
Well, the property owners have whatever rights they have at law. So if they're aggrieved and they want to appeal an approval or a action, or if they want to intervene and avail themselves of the legal rights, then they're free to do so.
But because of this island, we now setbacks change, like we said, for microcultivators. That's an issue with me.
You're affecting other property owners.
Yes, this is affecting that other I-2 area.
And
And if they're aggrieved, they have all the rights under the nuisance law to avail themselves, correct?
Well, sure. When I say they have all legal rights, I'm not just talking about zoning.
no more questions. Let's turn it back over. You have your traffic study and other things to go over.
So we'll just spend a couple minutes on the physical structures themselves. I mean, we talked already about the two-story elevation, the colonial style community with individual entrances and private outdoor space. We can go to the next slide. So this development is based on a mixed income community that we just delivered in Berlin. We're receiving certificate of occupancies right now. This is just real time. These images were taken a couple weeks ago. You'll have to excuse, we haven't done final paving yet, but it gives you a good sense of what the community will look like. The interior, I mean, the truth is, if you enter this community, any of our affordable communities, when you're on the grounds, when you're in the apartments, they do not in any way, shape, or form appear or feel like affordable housing communities. They are, in many instances, nicer, higher quality construction than many of the market rate or communities that are out there. This is a 2-bedroom unit. It's about 200 square feet. It's vinyl plank flooring, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. All units have in-unit washer and dryer. You can go to the next slide. Again, just to give you a modern open floor plan, 9-foot ceilings, walk-in closet, 2 vanity in the primary bathroom. Again, private outdoor space. We can go to the next slide. So that is a depiction of those 6 apartments or 6 buildings with 8 units in each apartment. I described the purpose of this 7th building with the 3-story elevation. You can go to the next slide. So this is a building that's modeled off of our luxury community in West Hartford, Connecticut. Full elevator service to the building. I think we can go to the next slide. So hopefully this will address some of the questions that have been raised about how does this benefit Cheshire, and so that leads. It's more than just the physical structure. It's all of these communities are the people who live there, people who are able to call these places home. And so first, I want to call up the CEO of the Arc of Southington, Tricia Gibney, who can help describe what I think is a real benefit to the community of Cheshire in the form of the supportive housing that we will be setting aside for individuals with intellectual disabilities.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Gibney, and I'm the CEO of the Arc of Southington. I want to thank you for having me here tonight. The Arc of Southington is an agency that provides supports to individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. Currently, we have 8 group homes in Southington, Cheshire, and Wallingford areas. Some of our individuals live independently with less than 24-hour support in their own apartments, and others live in group homes. I'm here to talk to you about our supported housing and how it would benefit individuals with intellectual disabilities. Supported housing assists individuals through the state-of-the-art technology to attain as much autonomy and independence that you and I would enjoy. The reason we wanted to be in Cheshire was because it was located between Southington and Wallingford, where our individuals can continue to keep their community connections in a safe family town. I was approached by a Cheshire parent who has a daughter with a disability who wanted to explore what residential options were out there for his daughter and other individuals that reside in Cheshire. We began to work with the Department of Developmental Services and other ARC agencies who have already developed supported housing apartments to see how we can start the process. We reached out to several developers that were recommended to us and interviewed these developers and decided that due to Metro Realty's excellent reputation and commitment to enhance the lives of individuals with disabilities, they were by far the choice for us. Think back in time when you graduated high school. What were your hopes, your dreams? Was it going off to college, starting a career, traveling, getting your own apartment? The world was your oyster, and almost anything you dreamed of was attainable. Many times, individuals with disabilities have the same dreams and ambitions, only to have many roadblocks stand in their way. Many still depend on aging parents, deal with transportation issues, and have limited community connections. Imagine the frustrations for not being able to have a productive life because there are so many obstacles in your way. And you have to settle for the status quo. You may feel depressed, unappreciated, and frustrated. An example is a woman we call Anna. Anna is a very capable young woman, but people see her as incapable because of her disability. She has staff support in group home setting, but resents it. She lives with other individuals that she didn't get to choose to live with. They are older or they are much younger than her, and she has nothing in common with them. Now picture Anna living in her own apartment and supported. She now uses technology to give her reminders when it's time to get up, when it's time to take her meds, get ready for work, etc. Anna can use a system that talks her way through a recipe so that she can make a meal independently. Should Anna forget to turn off her stove, she now has technology that will take care of that. Anna has a seizure disorder. She has technology that will alert a staff when she needs assistance. In the past, Anna was considered behavioral, but because she could yell out in frustration at staff who she perceived as putting demands on her. She needed assistance, but wanted it all on her terms, not somebody else's. Anna now can take more control over her life in her own apartment by living in a supported living. As parents, we want our children to grow up, be happy, and live productive lives. This is what supported housing is about for our individuals with intellectual disabilities. Thank you.
Anna's living in one of these residences.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Anna's living in one of these residences.
Mhm.
Where's she gonna go for recreation? Where's she gonna go shopping if she wants to get a cup of coffee or do something from that perspective?
That's a great question. So we teach our individuals to use Uber, but they also have staff during the day. So they do everything like you and I would. They get up, they make their lunch, they go to work, they come home after work. They have staff supports to help them banking, shopping, recreation activities, and then they go to bed. And then they wake up and do the same thing, but they have staff support for that.
Staff support should be able to access local parts of town and without it being a burden to her. Because the area doesn't seem to be placed that easy.
Right. So we do have transportation for our individuals. So if they need to go to the grocery store, if they're going bowling that night, they're going to a dance, they would all go. We have staff that would take them there. We also have a third shift staff that's up at night. So if somebody's technology goes down or they seem to be getting up more than they normally do because you can see that with our technology, that person would visit their apartment to make sure and do a wellness check with them.
And they don't have this option of this technology of putting in any apartment that they live in. It's only in.
They do have the technology. So we do an assessment on each individual to see what technology they would need. So we have a person on staff that does assistive technology assessments.
Are all these apartments for these 15 units one building, or is it scattered?
They're scattered throughout the building. In one,
One building, or there's what, 7 buildings, I think was the number?
for a lot of our aging population and older population will be living in the apartment setting scattered throughout the different floors that are indoors, because we find that, one, it's easier for slipping. We don't want people to be slipping and falling at night going out. So we have 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom apartments within that complex. But if somebody chooses that moves in that's younger and wants to live in an apartment in the front of the building and that goes out exterior, they have that option.
I mean, it's all in, the 15 units are one building.
Is there what?
No, the 15 apartments will be scattered throughout the development. So as Tricia was saying, some, it really depending on needs, some will be located in that large building toward the rear of the development. And that's the intent, that there are some individuals who would benefit from that style of setting. But this really, the program is, the whole point is inclusiveness and integration. So the idea is not to just, again, isolate these individuals into a single building.
Are any of these individuals at risk of wandering off? I know some of the homes around here, we've had this issue in Wallingford and Cheshire where they wander off, and they're in a nice little wooded area or in residential areas, and they're seen. Here's on a major thoroughfare, which is the most dangerous area in Cheshire for
Right.
accidents.
So the individuals that are identified that are going to be living in supported housing don't have those issues. Those are predominantly our people that will live with and need 24-hour supervision.
Rumberg Road is kind of like that, right? The same type of assisted. Are you aware of that Rumberg Road in Cheshire? They have some type of.
No, I'm not aware of that.
I think they have. Yeah, the housing authority has some kind of assisted, same kind of program like that also, I believe. I think.
Age, it's elderly.
No, it's not. I think that except. Yeah, I think Rumberg Road has that type. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ann Belcher from Cheshire Housing Authority, so I could just
Thank
quick
you.
answer that. No, we, Rumberg Road Beachport is project-based Section 8. It is, we don't have any supports for people,
So there's nothing like this in town right now?
correct. But I have several people who would benefit from it.
Okay, thank.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can a little facility like this be built someplace else that's residential, that's safer for them? That's in a nicer center of town, not off on the corner, near a thoroughfare and 691 and accidents? I meant the supportive part of it.
Based on design, does that meet your needs?
Yes, it does, because we have staff support. So I'm not worried about our individuals crossing a street or trying to walk down the middle of Route 10. We'll give them the skills. So if they feel that they need to go out shopping and they don't have staff assistance at the time, they'll do an Uber.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. I know that we talked about a little bit about the buildings. Can we get a breakdown of the buildings? How many 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or more?
So there are no 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom. They're all 1 and 2-bedroom apartments.
Okay.
Currently, we're at it is doing this off memory, so it's 44 2-bedroom, 28 1-bedroom. The caveat, I believe, we'll end up it'll end up, and I'll go over this later, a 71 unit request, a condition to reduce from 72 to 71, repurpose one of those 2-bedroom apartments to a common space. Really a place where some of the folks from the community will be able to share as like an amenity gathering area.
Gotcha. And with the 28 1-bedroom and 44 2-bedroom, any estimates on the number of residents that will be in the entire complex?
Estimates. So I can come back with better. I don't want to just do this on the fly. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions before we move on from the supportive component?
No, but it's getting late.
Yeah.
and
Well,
There's people here in the audience that want to speak, so we'd like to move, at least I myself would like to see you move through this so that the people would have the ability to ask questions.
Mhm.
And then I have a lot of questions, but I'd really like to get the public to speak first.
So these next couple of slides are important for some of the questions that you've been raising about what's the benefit to Cheshire. So I'm just going to go over these very quickly. This is a breakdown of the proposed affordability. 20% at 30% of area median income. Those will be, the vast majority of those are reserved for the supportive units that we've just been discussing. 40% will be at 50% of AMI, 20% at 80, 20% at market rate. I'm just going to go quickly into who these people are. So I just described the 30% AMI units, majority reserved, 12 out of the 15 will be for individuals in these supportive residences. So we can go to the 50% AMI, because I want to kind of reframe, we all have a perspective of what affordable housing is, who qualifies, who these people are. So I just want to reiterate that the income limitation for a 50% unit is 25% higher than an individual who's working on a minimum wage, a 40-hour work week. So these are, and I spoke with people from Bozzuto, people from employers in town, that these are entry-level positions that exist in town that are being hired for all the time. And yes, over time, as people gain experience, they advance through these income areas if they're successful in town. But it's an entry point for a position that that these employers are hiring for. And there's we can go to the next slide. And so the 80% apartments, the income, there's 15 of these apartments in the development. The income limitation is over $64,000. So just a couple of examples. A Cheshire school teacher who's been working for up to 5 years in the school system and has her master's degree, his or her master's degree, they would qualify for this 80% apartment. A Cheshire police officer in the training academy, or even up until their first full year of service, they would qualify for an 80% AMI apartment. I don't think that people consider that type of individual as someone who would qualify for affordable housing, but these individuals exist in all of our towns. They provide, the retail service sector positions. I mean, they're just, again, I just want to try and reframe who we are serving through the development. And then finally, this is data from Data Haven, which is a data service provider that provides these reports on an annual basis to all towns in Connecticut. This is from the 2023 report. So there are over 15,000 total jobs in the town of Cheshire. The average annual pay for those jobs is $64,000. So the average job in Cheshire qualifies for this 80% AMI apartment. Now, I don't think I need to tell you that someone making $64,000 right now is going to struggle to find a quality place to live in town. The cost of housing is astronomical. And so what these developments do are create an ability for people who may work in town, who may want to work in town, who want the ability to live in a quality residence in proximity to their employment. That availability just does not exist right now. And I'll point out a couple of areas of employment specifically. So healthcare and social assistance, a couple thousand jobs in town. A lot of those jobs are at Elam Park, and you can see the average annual pay there is $42,000. That's close to that 50%. If that's average, you know that there are a considerable number that are below that number as well. Similarly, transportation and warehouse. I mean, these are real jobs in town. We can go to the next slide. So now we have traffic. I think you guys want to hear some of that.
Could I?
Quick thing before
Sure.
traffic. And I'm going to say this because I say it to everybody that comes in with 830 Gs.
Mhm.
How do you make it so that these Cheshire residents or these Cheshire people that work in Cheshire get one of these apartments before anybody else from somewhere else?
So you probably hear the answer most frequently is that we can't discriminate based on where people live because of fair housing. But what we can do and what we will do is prioritize our wait list for our apartments, first come, first serve, to the wait list that's on the Cheshire Housing Authority wait list. So every time we have an availability, the first person we go to is the Cheshire Housing Authority. So I can commit to that in a recorded document that's how we will offer our apartments.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
So other folks who have come before us give us the same demographic of you, if you will, of folks who these types of units would be most advantageous for. Can you tell us, based on your experience in the other developments you've done, how often are the residents living into what it is you're telling us will the types of folks that will populate these units? So how many are the police officers, the teachers? How many of that ideal are actually moving into these residences? What does that demographic look like in reality versus how the folks you're telling us will move in?
That's similar to how I answered previously. If you'd like a more detailed breakdown, I can come back with better information. I don't have a statistic available. Anecdotally, that we provide housing for working class, it's workforce housing. It's people who have jobs, who pay the rent, who are not relying on subsidies.
Thank you.
All right, thank you and good evening. My name is Mark Vertucci. I'm a senior transportation engineer at Fuss and O'Neill. We're located at 146 Hartford Road in Manchester. I'm also a registered professional engineer in Connecticut and a certified professional traffic operations engineer. Our company did prepare a traffic impact study for this development. I just want to briefly describe the findings for you here this evening. If you can go back to the previous slide. So just to orient you quickly to the site, again, the site's located on the east side of Route 10, just to the south of the West Johnson, East Johnson signalized intersection. It's about 750 feet south. We are going to be aligning the driveway across from the structural site driveway. So we feel this is a good location for the driveway for a number of reasons. Lining a driveway opposite another unsignalized driveway is good for access management on Route 10. It consolidates the turning movements at a single point for safer operations. Also, at the point where we're tying in, the road is just beginning to widen as it widens for turn lanes northbound at the East and West Johnson intersection. So the road is still one lane in each direction. So that's important. You're turning left out, you're only crossing one lane. You don't have to cross multiple lanes of traffic. But also the road's a little bit wider. So in the southbound direction, there is room for vehicle bypass. So if somebody's waiting to turn left into the site, a through vehicle can pass by on the right side and it will not stop traffic on Route 10. Also, this location is positioned roughly midway between two traffic signals, the Johnson traffic signals and also the Fieldstone Court traffic signal to the south. These signals are coordinated, so they provide, when they change phase, side streets go red, the through movements go red and the side streets go. There are gaps that are created in traffic in both directions in a coordinated manner. So that allows vehicles the opportunity to turn left or right out of the site. And as I'll describe in a moment, the site distances do exceed DOT criteria for safe egress. You can go to the next slide now. So as part of the study, we did conduct turning movement traffic counts at the intersection of Route 10 at West and East Johnson in July of this year. The counts did indicate the peak hours were 7:15 to 8:15 in the morning, 4:45 to 5:45 in the afternoon. So those highest hours of the day are the hours that we analyzed in the traffic study. I did want to note we cross-checked those counts with the latest available DOT counts, which were conducted in May of 2022, and they were very similar, almost dead on with those counts. So we did grow those counts to the 2025 design year, which is when we would expect this development would get built if it were approved. We utilized a 1% per year growth rate, which was provided by the DOT. And we also added in background traffic from the Stonebridge Crossing mixed-use development, which will be going in, as you know, about a half mile north of this property. So as far as the traffic that will be generated from this development, we utilized rates provided in the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. This is an industry accepted resource for determining traffic generation. And for this type of land use, multifamily housing, mid-rise, the manual indicates for 72 units, we'll be generating 6 entering trips and 20 exiting trips in the morning peak hour, and 17 entering and 11 exiting trips in the afternoon peak hour. So as you can see from these numbers, this is a very low traffic generator. And just to give you a point of comparison, if you, with the existing zone, the I-2 zone, as was discussed earlier, there are many more very intense uses that could be built on this property in that I-2 zone. Some of those are office, medical office, distribution center, warehouse facility, restaurants, a fitness center. These are all very high traffic generators. Some would generate 5 to as much as 10 times the amount of traffic that this residential development would generate. So to determine the impact of the traffic from this development on the adjacent road network, we did take those background traffic volumes. We added in the site generated traffic from the apartments, and that gives us our combined or build condition scenario. We then ran a capacity analysis on the site driveway intersection and the Johnson intersection. And we ran that analysis for both conditions, the before versus after scenarios. And what we found was at the intersection of Route 10 at West and East Johnson Avenue, that intersection today operates at a level of service C. That is considered an acceptable operation by the Department of Transportation. With the addition of traffic from this development, there'll be no change in level of service at that intersection. At the site driveway intersection, Route 10 at the structural driveway and our proposed site driveway turns into the site would operate efficiently at level of service A. Coming out of the driveway, as has been mentioned, we acknowledge there are some peak hour delays for vehicles trying to turn out onto Route 10 during the morning and afternoon highest periods of traffic. But again, as I mentioned, those gaps in the traffic signals afforded by the signal at Fieldstone Court as well as Johnson Avenue, coordinated signals, they do provide gaps to allow vehicles to turn left out of the site. And a condition of a delay on that road is obviously not uncommon. Every driveway up and down Route 10 is dealing with peak hour delays for traffic turning into and out of those properties. On the next slide, I just wanted to hit on queue analysis quickly. The capacity analysis revealed there is a minimal increase in queues of 2 vehicle lengths or less on all the intersection approaches at the West and East Johnson intersection. Sight lines were measured. They do exceed DOT criteria for safe egress. We measured 1,000 feet looking right to the north. Based on the measured speeds on Route 10, 508 feet is required. So we're well in excess of that. Looking to the south, where there is a crest, as was mentioned before, the sight distance is 510 feet. The requirement is 478 feet based on the measured northbound speeds on Route 10. So again, we are in excess of the minimum DOT required sight lines for safe egress. We did recommend clearing and trimming of some vegetation along the site frontage. That's just to ensure that these site distances can be maintained in the future. Also, from a safety perspective, we did review the latest 3 years of available crash data from the Yukon Crash Repository, and we identified no abnormal crash frequencies or severities in the study area. I did want to point out specifically, we looked at the structural driveway right across the street from where we're tying in. There was 1 crash in the last 3 years, but it was not related to a vehicle turning into or out of that property. It was a side swipe. in the southbound direction. We also looked just down the road at the Italian restaurant, which is a much higher generator than what this would be generating. And what we found there as well is there was only one crash in the last 3 years involving a vehicle turning into or out of that driveway. And on the next slide, just to conclude, the findings of our traffic study was that this proposed residential development will not have a significant impact to traffic operations within the study area. The development traffic can be safely accommodated on the adjacent road network. And I did want to point out, this is a state road. It's under state jurisdiction, being State Route 10. So should this development get approved, we would have to go before the DOT district office for an encroachment permit review, because we'd be cutting a driveway onto a state road. So the Department of Transportation would be thoroughly reviewing this as the next step. Sorry. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I can take questions now, or I think Attorney Hollister's.
So we definitely have some questions on this one.
Yep.
Um,
Getting off easy here.
So there's no public transportation. We know that. The buses don't go up there. School buses. How do school buses affect this? There's going to be kids living in these 2-bedroom apartments.
The school bus, we know where the
School buses don't go into developments. So what happens to the traffic up there with school buses? It's a single lane road on each side.
How does the school
Right
bus
after it.
handle that?
What does the traffic analysis say about school buses?
I would assume, I mean, there's.
You're the
there's
traffic
ver-
engineer.
yeah,
What does
there's
the
there's
traffic engineer say
there-
about school buses?
The shoulders on Route 10 are very wide, as I mentioned. There's enough room for bypass there, so.
There's no bypass.
I'm
The school bus
assuming-
has its red lights on.
Yeah, so the,
What does a school bus do to the traffic?
well, yeah, I mean, when a school bus stops, this traffic has to stop. It's a state law, so.
Okay,
It's-
safety issue, number one. So you're talking
That's
about.
not it's a state law. It's
Okay.
a state law that you must stop for a stop school bus.
Okay. So coordinated lights. How much time have you spent on that site?
We, as part of the traffic
How much time
study.
have you spent on that site? You're here in front of us as traffic engineer.
Yes, as part of the traffic study, we do field review of the site. We look at it during the morning peak hours of traffic, the afternoon peak hours of traffic. So we watch the traffic flow.
How much time have you spent on the site?
About 2 hours in the 2 hours in the morning and about 2 hours in the afternoon.
You personally?
Peak hours. Correct.
Okay.
And I'm very
So-
familiar with this
So the
corridor.
coordinated lights, one of the biggest complaints we have in town, we've reached out to our state representatives and our state senators that the lights are not coordinated. The lights are horrible all along the Route 10 corridor. So I know that they say they're coordinated, they're not. So if you've been there, you know that. They're not
There-
coordinated and
I
doesn't
should-
open up.
I should note as well, there is a state project that is about to go under design. Final design date of that is scheduled for late 2025 that will replace 15 of the traffic signals along Route 10 in a coordinated signal system.
Every time.
The current signals are on a closed loop coordinated system, so there is some coordination, but the state has identified that the coordination can be improved. So that
We've been
that
fighting
state
that.
project
We've been
will-
fighting that battle for years. So
A couple of years, yeah.
hopefully that happens. How many trips did you say are exiting in the morning during peak hour?
You can go
26?
back- You can go back actually 2 slides there, yep. So we have 20 exiting in the morning peak hour and 11.
How many are
exiting
going
in the
north? How many are going south?
Just give me 1 second. So we're estimating 70% of the trips coming from the north and about 30% from the south, given the presence of 691 just to the north of the site. So exiting in the morning, we have 6 left, 14 right, and
Okay.
exiting in the afternoon.
So what I just heard was teachers, policemen, Bizzutos, schools, Elam Park. These people are going to live there. That's all south. So where does that figure come from then, that a limited number are going to go? If this development is so good for all of these businesses in town, the major players in town, your traffic study flawed.
We're looking at peak hours, so we're looking at commuting traffic. In a residential
Okay.
development, you get people commuting to and from work. You have a major highway in I-691 that is just north
Okay,
of the
but we
site,
just
half
heard
mile.
that this is geared for Bozzuto's, teachers, police, schools, kids going to school, and Elam Park, all south again.
We can run those numbers probably in a variety of different ways. But when you've got 20 trips coming out, that number is so low, it's not going to make a difference in our analysis.
I'm going to hold my other questions. I know the other commissioners want to jump in, but I'm going to agree with what Mr. Strollo said. I'd like a third-party review of a traffic study, because this doesn't make sense with what we heard, who this development is geared towards versus what you're telling us for the traffic flow.
And how many trucks out of Bozzuto's did you guys count?
We
What's the total vehicle count per day on Route 10 for 24 hours? That's the number I was. And of that number, how many commercial motor vehicles are going past the median? Because that's a standard that's in that area that we don't have on the south end of town. There's so much commercial. I lived there. During COVID, tractor trailers were from Industrial Avenue all the way to Dunkin' Donuts lined up. So the commercial traffic on that road is insane. And the people from Bozzuto's at 2:00 in the morning walk by my house with my dog goes by. So they're walking down the road across the grass. They're not going on the sidewalk. They're not going, well, sometimes on the road, but they're walking on the grass. So that's some people that you're dealing with going to Bozzuto's to work at night or whatever. So I'm saying on the traffic study, I'd like to know exactly how many commercial motor vehicles, how many vehicles totally a day. And during the peak hours, right, and you're gonna take a left-hand turn, you're directly across from that other entrance, but you're going into a road that's narrowing. That's where things happen. Now you're putting a person, you know.
Yeah, it's,
I'm much older than you as far as doing this stuff, you know, with towing. So it's like, you know, I see accidents every day. That's my business. So like, you know, if you're putting somebody in a position, especially a person that's a disabled person, if they're driving or whatever, that you're putting them in a position to be in a traffic intersection where there's going to be an accident, and that's a catastrophic.
Yeah. And it's a race
You know,
where it
that's
narrows
a
who
bad
gets ahead.
intersection.
It's
That's a
bad.
area.
when you're looking for a spot to put a driveway, always you want to put it where there's 2 lanes of traffic and not 3 or 4. You want to be when you're making a left out.
Coming to where the road's
Yep.
going into one lane is right where across from your driveway.
The road is beginning to widen in both directions, but it is a single southbound lane. Yep.
Tractor trailer and a car.
It's a single.
Narrowing down.
It's
Right
a.
now, it's kind of scary. Now you're throwing a car coming out of the driveway.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
It is a single southbound lane at the point where we're tying in both single south. The traffic has already merged at that point. Mhm.
There's 2 vehicles going past where it
Yeah.
merges. I mean, I see it all the
Yeah.
time. I'm on the road every single day.
Yep.
In a big tractor trailer, driving that truck. So I know what the traffic's doing. Now you're gonna throw another driveway out right there. Like I said, if you're gonna go take a right or bring a road out through Fieldstone and come out on a light,
Yeah.
that's different. Where you're coming out there, you're on an arch, and there are accidents there. I would like the police departments, I would like a total accident from Route 10 in West Johnson, East Johnson, all the way to Fieldstone.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fieldstone. Fieldstone. Between Fieldstone Court
Yeah.
and those 2 intersections. I would like to know how many accidents have happened there in the last, since 21. That's what I would know.
The crashes are in the study.
What was that?
It's in the study. It's in the appendix. Every crash in the last 3 years that's happened is in the appendix. So there were an average of 6 crashes per year at the Route 10 at Johnson, West Johnson intersection. Again, there was no identifiable or abnormal patterns that you would see at a traffic signal. You're going to be seeing rear end collisions, and you're going to be seeing angled collisions on the left-hand turn. So we saw everything we're seeing there is completely consistent with what we would expect at a signalized intersection that has 2,500 cars going through it in the peak hours.
I just
And
have
just
a
to
quick
give
question
you-
about those stats.
Mhm.
You got those stats from Yukon Crash Repository?
Correct.
Where do they get their data?
They get their data from all the local police departments.
How often do they ping them? There was 2 crashes just.
I mean, yeah.
Right there.
The years that we did, I believe 2021, and 2022.
You have to
I believe
list
we did.
fatalities?
We like to do complete years in the crash data. And the repository is not going to be up to date to like yesterday.
Well,
You know,
there's a lot of
it
accidents
takes a
that don't
little
get
bit
reported
for
to
it
the police
populate.
either.
These are crashes that are either have an injury or greater than $1,000 in property damage. So if it were a minor fender bender, it might not register.
Do you have to list fatalities?
Yes, that's all in the data.
I know there's a fatality up there in the last 2 years and it's not listed. So something's wrong.
I mean, it's every crash is in the appendix there.
Well,
But the important thing is, again,
the important thing is to get
we
good
look at-
information so that we can make a decision. That's what's important.
Well, the crash data is in the report for the latest 3 years, and the industry standard DOT uses is reviewing the latest crash data for the most recent 3 years. We've done that, and we have not found a crash history at the site driveway location. We haven't found it coming in and out of the Italian restaurant, which is very close and is a higher traffic generating use than this would be.
So for our staff, I've heard 2 things: request for the police department and an independent third party.
So I have a list of running questions for you that I'm going to review before we're done tonight.
Thank you.
I have another question, or I have a question. You did this traffic study on July 12th, which was a Wednesday this summer, which is probably the quietest time in town because there's no school. A lot of people are on vacation. It seems like it should be done September, October, when you're near a potential shopping center up there. So it seems like it would make more sense to do it.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we did cross-check those counts with the latest available DOT counts, which were done in just last year in 2022, and they were done in May when school was in session. The counts were almost dead on with what we counted.
But you weren't there in May. I mean, I don't understand
The
what you're
state of
saying.
Connecticut does constant traffic count monitoring on all their roads every 3 years. So they do have a count station here on Route 10, just south of Johnson and West Johnson. They put out counters for 24 hours that, keep track of the hourly volume.
I just don't think that's the same as actually being there and observing the traffic and observing all the side streets. I think it should be done during a busier time.
It's done all day long. Like they put the counter out.
I
for
understand what you're saying. I
Mhm.
still think if no one's actually there watching what's going on, it's not the same. It's statistics. It just.
Well, as part of the study, we go out and
Thank you.
we observe as part of the field work we do to supplement the count data.
So Mr. Gooden, you have that list. If it's okay with the applicant, I would like, we're losing people from the public, and I know that they do want to speak. It's okay with the applicant. I'd like to see if they have questions on what's been discussed so far. So we can get their answers or get them on the record and then continue. Oh yeah, and we are not closing this public hearing tonight, by the way. Is that okay, Michael? Is that okay with the applicant? Okay, so if anybody from the public has a question, we're going to ask you to come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. We're going to limit you tonight to 3 minutes apiece. So please come up. And I'm sorry, just for the rules, how this happens, please address your questions to the commission, and then the applicants will.
Right. Strictly speaking, I don't have questions, but I want to speak in support of supportive housing in this town. My name is Liam Considine. I'm from 91 Vista Terrace in Cheshire. I moved back to town, grew up here, moved back 14 years ago, honestly, because my house is so close to 691. What I did not know, because I did not need to know at the time, is that the Cheshire public school system has one of the best special ed departments in the state. We didn't know that the Best Buddies program is a model nationally. I didn't need to know that because I didn't know until my son was 5 years old that he had special needs. When we found out, the Cheshire system leapt to our side to provide a community for my son. He was celebrated, what's known as the weatherman at Dodd Junior High School. I'm aging myself, Dodd Middle School. At Cheshire High School, he knew everyone's name. They all knew him. He had a wonderful time. What brings a tear to my eye, as recently as the last football game, and not the results of the game, was when we drive by the high school, my son says, "I miss high school, Dad. I miss high school, Dad." What he misses is community. What he misses is being integrated into a community, not being isolated. As parents, when I found out my son had special needs, why did I cry that night? Because I was afraid he was going to be lonely. This kind of housing adds another tool. When we look at the special needs community, some kids, some adults rather, some people are served in a whole spectrum of services. For a lot of our people, the group home is not a proper setting. For a lot of our people, supportive housing is the opportunity to put them in a community. It's by design that they are in a community of people without special needs. They're not isolated, they are known. This is an opportunity. The notion of supportive housing in Cheshire will get great support in this community. This community is open-hearted to these people. The more we are seen, the better for everyone. Thank you. Question? Oh, indeed. If you were to go to Reread Books, anybody from Reread here right now? Yes. There are efforts. We are moving the boulder to make sure that our people continue to have a sense of community. And community does not just mean us, the parents and the family and allies of people with special needs. It's making sure that we're all seen together. The Cheshire public school system is a model to aspire to. Obviously, you're applying it to life after school, but it is something to look at as a model. To answer your question, yes, there are plenty of people who could actually benefit from this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Brent Boudelier. I am 28 years old, and I have lived in Cheshire my whole life with my family. I am a member of Southington ARC and DDS. I'm really excited about being able to live in Cheshire in my own apartment near my family. I work at R.W. Hines, and I have friends there. I do Best Buddies through Quinnipiac University. I want to be able to live in my own apartment just like my brothers and make new friends. I would be close to my mom and my favorite coffee at Dunkin'. I'm still a little scared, but I think my dad would be very proud of me. I hope you are excited about the new independent living project just like me. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Brent's mom, Donna Boudelier, 138 Sloper Lane, a lifelong Cheshire resident. My husband was a lifelong resident as well. The concept of the independent living has never been offered to our community until now. How great would it be for my son to tell everyone that he has his own apartment? He's working here in Cheshire, where all of his family and friends are. And if you know the Baudelaires, we're kind of like the Bowmans. There's a lot of us. The potential for him to grow even more would be great. We had the opportunity this past Saturday to visit a similar community in Berlin with Ben. He was so gracious. This was a great model for Cheshire to follow. Brent was so excited about it and is already planning on decorating his own apartment. Brent's dad always said to me, "You don't give Brent enough credit." I don't think he can do it. He can do it. He can do anything, even live on his own in his own apartment. I want to make that dream come true for him. He works in Cheshire and lives in Cheshire and has many friends in this community. Now I say to Brent, you can do anything you want. You can live on your own, in your own apartment, and I will be right down the street. So please, members, from a mom who is aging and worried about what's going to happen when I'm not here, where's my son going to live? Please, with Brent and other people with intellectual disabilities or physical disabilities in our community, let's make this a reality for them. I want him to have a quote unquote normal life like his brothers did. I thank you for your time.
Good evening, Christopher Affey.
Before you speak,
Yep.
point of order.
Okay.
Chris, you could be.
Okay.
You could be sitting in this commission. So please don't prejudice yourself and not be able to sit on this in the future.
I was going to mention that as well, but yeah. So my question, again, I'm Christopher Affey, 204 Peck Lane. I will be planning zoning alternate starting December 11th. My question was, I did want to hear more about why Cheshire needs affordable housing. I did hear some statements that Cheshire does not need affordable housing. So I'd like to hear more about both sides in the future, since it's not being closed. Why do we need it? And if there are any objections to why we don't need it, I'd like to hear that.
Hi, my name is Bill Costello. I live at 5 Urbina Court in Cheshire. I moved to Cheshire with my wife. She lived in Hartford. I lived in Stratford. I worked in Stamford just about 30 years ago, this coming May. And we've raised our three daughters. My oldest is Andrea. She's going to be turning 31 in May. And I have two other daughters, both graduated, one from University of Vermont, one from University of Connecticut. All three of my daughters would qualify to live in that residence. My oldest has special needs. We have been blessed to live in this town. I can't tell you how much we've appreciated what Cheshire has given to my family in terms of not only my two daughters who went to college, but Andrea, who has struggled her whole life and been blessed to go through the Cheshire school system. And she's doing fantastic now, thanks to our community in Cheshire. And it really is a community. We have dedicated, my family, my wife and I have dedicated our lives to helping others in our town. My wife, she doesn't do it for the income, but she works at the Park and Rec Department on a part-time basis with the Therapeutic Rec Department, helping other special needs families. She does more counseling to families than she does actually Park and Rec work. But it is a blessing to have that resource in town, which all of us should be thankful for. We've also dedicated our life to raising money in charities with the Cheshire Road Race. We started that many years ago and passed it on to others, to Abilities Without Boundaries, the Cheshire Lions Club, the Best Buddies programs. We've been actively involved with all those charities. And we were the founding members of the Reread Books. It was Hope Reinhardt and I sat at Quinnipiac having lunch, and we came up with the idea, and she found the location, and we funded it. So we love the idea of giving back to the town of Cheshire. This started not by Metro Realty. It didn't start with the ARC. It started by Cheshire families Liam, who just left, myself, were invited by the ARC to come and talk to them about what the community of Cheshire wants. We sat and interviewed developers throughout, not just Connecticut, all over the country that wanted to come in here and do the same thing. We picked these guys because they knew what they were doing and they got references from people that we respect. This is started in Cheshire and it will end in Cheshire. And it's going to be something that benefits everybody. And to Mr. Strollo, let me tell you, I have 3 daughters and I love the fact that they have an opportunity to live in Cheshire. Nothing's wrong with Waterbury, but I love Cheshire. They love Cheshire. They're right here. They work in this town. They love this town. Same thing. My goal is to find a place for Andrea, but the whole community to have their kids live close to their parents, just like our grandparents. We love the fact we have Elam Park, but our kids can't get in there. You guys approved all that development. A lot of traffic issues.
But wouldn't you want something that would be more central to the center of town? Wouldn't you want a development more in the center of town than?
No, because we kind of live in this community. We know what is needed. We love this concept. It's going to be, you're developing a North End commerce section. We didn't start that. You guys did. It's going to be wonderful. They're going to have that community to work. My daughter works at CVS. She has a paid job in CVS. She didn't always have the ability to do that. Through the community, we got her employed and she's doing great. She's going to live in this community and she's going to go to work probably in that North End development eventually, but she got trained through Reread Books. That's something that you should all be proud of and should work towards helping this.
But the other thing too is it's only allows 14 people and there's more than 14 disabled children that are, don't you have a bigger pool of people that need this kind of housing versus what we're going to get out of this small development?
It actually is 18 individuals.
Okay, so
It
how
doesn't mean that I'm doing this for my own daughter. I don't know.
no, I understand that, but as far as the community goes, like I thought that this was allowed in like Marbridge or not Marbridge, what's it, Rumburg. I thought Rumburg had this type of dynamic in it, so I thought we already had something available in Cheshire, which I was unaware of that. So I didn't know that we didn't have anything available for special needs kids to go to live on their own. I thought that was that kind of development, but I didn't realize this dynamic wasn't available. But that being said, my number one thing is the safety of your child and anybody else is going to be living in development. And to me, something of that category, I would think that you would want more in a residential area where it'd be safer for your child and whoever else's child's going to be there to be able to be transported around. I just, like I said, it's an industrial area. There's trucks. I mean, I live there. I get it. If my dog walks outside, he's going to die on the front. That's what I'm saying. It's not, Route 10 is no joke.
Mr. Strollo, I know special needs individuals. My daughter works at Reread. She won't go to get her sandwich across the street. That's just the way they are. And the supports that ARC is going to provide is going to provide those opportunities for them to safely get in the car and commute to where they need to get whatever they need.
Turn
No
that
different than
microphone
anybody
up,
else
please.
would. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to point out, this is a homegrown thing. It's not outside developers. And I realize you guys have been put into a bind with some other people, but this has been worked on way before these other developments came down, and we're really proud of it. And I think you guys should really look deep and think hard about this proposal. I need some water right now, but it really is going to benefit the town of Cheshire, not just for the special needs individuals. This is going to be one of the nicer, affordable complexes in town. I can guarantee that. We've all toured all these facilities that Metro built. They're beautiful. You can't find anybody who doesn't like living there, or the town officials.
I'm not opposing the way they're building or anything else. It's where it is in safety. That's like you said, it's not anything to do with the product. It's about where you put the product. That's kind of me. Like it's a great product and I'm all about the product and want to buy the product, but it's where it is in town that concerns me.
But we only have the proposal in front of us. We don't have
I realize that. That's my concern.
And I would agree.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for coming. And when I was listening to Brent's mom speak, and Brent, you said you'd like to go to Dunkin' Donuts. First thing I picture is you walking up Route 10 from this development to Dunkin' Donuts. It scares me. It really does scare me, the thought of you walking on Route 10 to get your coffee that you like so much at Dunkin' Donuts. So I agree with Mr. Stroll. I mean, we're going to keep an open mind here. Obviously, we have another public hearing that's going to come up. We're listening, but I agree with Mr. Stroll. I'm a little bit concerned about the safety, and it's not only about the 15 units that would be supported, but there's another 57 units of people that potentially could walk onto Route 10. They're going to be crossing traffic. So just want to put that out there. So I agree with Mr. Stroll. I support the concept. I'm just not sure about the location. Yeah, well, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you for your like talking into them like good enough. For considering Mike Kenny. I live on Gunner Court in Cheshire and moved here about 20 years ago. And we have 3 children. And our youngest has special needs. And the reason we moved to Cheshire was because of the education for him. So if people doubt that's important, talk to a special need parent, because that's why we were here. They all went through the school system. They're all doing well. But our youngest, he's 25 now. He has to go to New Haven because he doesn't want to live at home with mom and dad. He tells us he wants to be independent and do it on his own, just like your kids and all of our kids do. So he has to go down to Chapel Haven, down in New Haven, and it would be better for all of us if he was able to live in Cheshire, and better for him as well. I know we have a lot of friends in the same situation that love this town, appreciate what the town has done for us. And to kind of tie into what others have said, this will be an absolute 5-star thing to bring to the town, because you're walking the talk now. They got all their education and supports from Cheshire, and for them to be able to stay here and live later in their life independently would mean a lot. And I'm not from around here. My wife's from Hamden. I'm from the Philadelphia area, but I love this town because it's so well run. You make such good decisions as a committee, and here's another opportunity to make a great decision. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, again, we're not going to close this public hearing tonight, so at the next hearing, you'll have another opportunity to speak based on what you heard tonight or other items that are brought up. I have a question for the applicant, though. So based on what you've heard here, there's a need for the supported units. Have you thought about building more, or not having it limited to 15, because you have another 50 some odd units that could serve this community that everybody just spoke very eloquently about moving?
So the program that we are utilizing for, as I said earlier, it's really about inclusion and integration. The Department of Developmental Services limits the number of this type of apartment that you can include within the overall development. So we're up against a cap, frankly. It's 25% of the total apartments. And so we're at like 22%. I would be certainly open to going all the way to that 25%. Some of that is a question for, the Arc of Southington and their capacity, but I would include more if I could, honestly. They're a great resident. We have experience with supportive housing in other communities. They're a fantastic resident. Their rent is paid by DDS. I have absolutely no concern in going as high as we possibly can in that type of in that arrangement. It's just that we are limited by the program and the number that we can do in this community.
And this is part of that list that's I don't know, the Cheshire Affordable Group would put forward that you can draw to. So the first people that would get
So the first people for the supportive units, those are placed directly by the ARC. So people who apply through the ARC are the ones who are placed, and the priority is given to, as I learned from Elba, who's here from DDS, it's given to people who are most likely to succeed, which are people who have connections to the community, who have family who live in the community, who have a history in the community.
Would you consider putting sidewalks in the front of your property?
In the development I most recently completed or is under construction in Farmington, I put in 1,000 feet of sidewalks. And I was just asking Mark Vertucci what the distance is to Johnson, and it's 750. So let me look at that. I don't want to wing it, but we can put in lots of sidewalks, yes.
So, it's getting late. We don't have to stop, but this seems like a good breaking point to me. Michael?
So I just want to go over let's say homework for the group. The applicant's going to work on, you've had a question about demographics of residents. He's going to provide some data on that. Sidewalks, as we just heard, they're going to follow up with that. You would like an accident report from the police department from East Johnson, West Johnson intersection down to Fieldstone since 2020. Okay. And then the last thing is you want to go to Schoolhouse instead. Okay, go to Schoolhouse. The last is a third-party traffic study. Am I missing anything? So
do we really need that? Yes. You do?
Okay. Well, here's the question based on Commissioner Strollo's comments. Are you looking for the study to be updated by the applicant? So I just for the clarification, the commission, if you want a third party to review it, they're going to look at their data. They're not going to do an independent study. If you want the study updated, that's a different request.
Well, for me, I'd like the study updated because I mentioned school buses. I mentioned with all the businesses that were named by the applicant. Of all the businesses that were named by the applicant, I mentioned Bozzuto's, Elam Park, teachers, police, and everything. I'd like to see that get updated.
So that's the commission would like the applicant to update their study to more recent numbers. Is that what you're saying? So the applicant could hear that too. But more importantly, you also would like a third party. And the only concern I have is that you're asking them to provide new data, so we wouldn't have a third party review anything until the new data is provided.
Correct.
Are you actually looking, Sean, for an actual hard count, I think is what you're looking for. You're looking for an actual physical count.
Like I said, anywhere else in Cheshire, you have a lot of cars, right? The problem with that section of road between 691 and Industrial Avenue is the highest traffic of trucks in the town. And now you're going to put a residential development in the middle. It's like insanity to me because like trucks don't care. Trucks don't see people. Trucks run over people. And I don't want to be the person from the truck that just ran over somebody's in that development. And I'm gonna be. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, it scares me to put myself in that position where, like I'm here talking about this. I mean, basically, that's the high truck traffic.
And you talk about buses. The reason why buses have flashing lights and the little bar that comes out is because of the death that happened right at Byron Rondo's when that was a house on that little hill because a kid got run over. That's where that law came from. And that's where you want to put more housing for kids. Think about that.
So, Michael, to answer your question, as far as the traffic study goes,
yes and yes.
I would like to see an update and then I'd like to have it reviewed.
Okay.
I think there's gaps that we've identified tonight that the applicant should have an opportunity to address and then have it reviewed.
So, and then your next public hearing is in 2 weeks. So it'll be the Monday after Thanksgiving. 7:30, same time, same place for anyone who's here right now.
I think you're going at least that long.
Now,
I think this could even
if
go.
for
into-
some reason any of these requests can't be fulfilled, your next meeting isn't until December 11th.
Correct.
So just want to put that on the record and on your radar.
And it's got to close by the 17th,
18th.
18th? Okay, we'll get some work to do between now and then. So what I was suggesting before, again, it's getting late. Does the applicant have anything else they'd like to say tonight? Again, we're going to continue, obviously going to continue the public hearing. Okay, anything from the town? Mr. Nafrio? Okay. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And that's all we have for the public hearing?
Correct.
Okay. We're gonna go to the regular meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have, give me a second. We have some communication.
So you have the planning, first approval of minutes, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second, Mr. Mercado, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. So moving on, sorry, to the
Motion to
regular
accept the
meeting.
minutes.
We have a motion to accept? Okay.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Yeah.
Second.
No discussion? Oh, we had the second. All in favor? Aye, good. Okay. So we have Mr. Selamat and Mr. Cardera seconding. Now on to communication.
So you have the Federation of Planning and Zoning Commissions quarterly letter update. You have two requests for, one was a bond release and the other is.
Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from this discussion.
Hold on. They neither are ready for tonight, the road acceptance or the bond. So that'll be on your next agenda.
I just wanted to make one comment with regards. Oh. Hello?
Hearing's closed.
Oh,
We would need the applicant here also.
okay.
Hey, please come back, though.
Yes, definitely.
Please
I will.
come back.
I will. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the two road acceptance bond release, that'll be on your next agenda. They have some items they need to work for the town engineer. We'll have it the next meeting. Unfortunately, he had wetlands and ZBA last week, so we didn't have time to finish the report. We'll have it the next meeting.
Thank you.
So I'd like to question the overtime.
Thanks for all the info. Email me.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
All right, thank you.